Earlier in the week, it became a reality that the governor has called the General Assembly back into session to deal with a number of items involving public safety. To speak on this, Representative Scott Cepicky, a good friend of the show, always available with his time, and we always appreciate him. Hey, Scott. How are you?
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing?
How you doing? Now, it was casual day. You didn't get the memo.
This is casual day.
I've seen you more.
When you're working for the people of Tennessee, they expect you to look a certain way.
I would give some good money to get you on your tractor at your farm in one of those nice suits that you have.
No, it's not a nice suit. Those are special blue jeans and shirts.
Everything going well for the summer? I mean, we've been building to what we now know as the special session, right?
Well, this is a very unique one. The previous 5 I've been involved in were more of a broader call where they would open up like Title 49 of education or 39 criminal justice. It looks like the governor has been very specific about the things that he wants us to speak on and talk about and debate when we come back into special session. As you've seen, the 17 different types of topics here that we're going to be talking about. And the reason why that is there is to make it as narrow as a call as possible so that we don't get legislation as a shotgun effect that's all over the place.
The governor included what he calls the order of protection in the call. I think it was number 12 of the 17 or 18. Mm-hmm. And I understand why he did that. Mm-hmm. At the same time, when the governor's, I forget the word it's used, his priorities, like the actual legislation that the governor is passing to the General Assembly to get someone to carry for him, the order of protection wasn't there. And I think that, to me, without having any specific information from the governor's office, maybe you do, that's a signal to me that the governor is cognizant that any sort of premature violation of constitutional rights is a non-starter for the General Assembly. Do you get that feeling, too?
I do. I swore an oath of office. And if you don't mind, I'd like to let everybody know what our oath was. It's very specific.
Yeah, sure.
Here. It talks about the solemnly affirm as a member, but it says, here's what it says. I will not propose or assent to any bill, vote, or resolution which shall appear to me injurious to the people, or consent to any act or thing, whatever that shall have a tendency to lessen or abridge their rights and privileges as declared by the Constitution of this state. A red flag law is in direct violation of my oath of office. You cannot vote for it because I am abridging your rights in the Constitution. And so I think what the governor has realized is that there is no support from the General Assembly on the Republican side. It's not going to happen. I think he met his obligation with maybe some groups that he has spoken with that he would propose something like this. I think what he's done is he's opened up the call that if somebody wants to run a red flag law, they can. But I do not believe it'll be the governor.
Do you believe that the government of Tennessee, I want to broaden this question out because you bring this up, and it's an intriguing aspect of the relationship between the elected representatives and the individual citizens that elected them. Does the state have the right to incarcerate someone due to a determination of mental instability or mental illness prior to that person committing a crime?
No, I don't believe they do. I think that is why we have a criminal justice code, right? You have to cross over a line and do something that is against the laws that have been crafted in the state of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. To inadvertently incarcerate somebody or take away constitutional rights from them based off of something they may do in the future, I think you're going to have some issues there, especially in the state of Tennessee.
Boy, we were talking about this yesterday, and it reminds me of that movie Minority Report with Tom Cruise, right?
Pre-crime.
Right. Oh, we know that you're going to do this, so we're going to go ahead and arrest you before you do it. That's a very, very dangerous place.
Do you know how many speeding tickets we'd write?
I'd have a lot of them.
We could fund education with that.
I appreciate the bright red line there.
Yeah.
And I understand that the consternation that a lot of Tennesseans have, particularly those closer to the covenant situation. I think we all are in some way close to the covenant situation, but there's some closer than others that want to believe that we can do something. But in a society that believes in freedom and individual liberty to do as you choose, that's just a very dangerous suggestion that the government can determine prior to you committing a crime that you are such a danger to commit that crime that they're going to go ahead and take rights away.
And isn't one of the things that you're arguing is the arbitrariness of when you're a danger?
Sure.
I mean, because my mental capacity for stress and handling that is maybe different than yours, where there's a line that I cross that may take me longer to get to than you. So how do you as a psychologist put that kind of pressure on them to say you're responsible for determining when is?
Well, and I understand why reasonable people might disagree with you, that there is a way to identify mental illness. But my suggestion has been all along, as we talked about this summer, well, if that's the case, if you believe that, fine, then you should be prepared to take away all of that person's constitutional rights, not just cherry pick the one that's important to you.
That's correct. And that's where we're not going to go.
So do you think the governor structured his call in such a way to prevent the crazies? And by the crazies, I mean the leftists that are in the minority in the legislative process, but obviously, they want to introduce everything from, all of these unconstitutional actions like, banning assault weapons or banning this or banning that. You expect that to come from the Democrats. Do you think because of the nature of his call, you can exclude some of that nonsense?
Well, I would think that whatever the governor tried to do was a success by looking at the tweets and stuff from my colleagues across the line.
Right. They hated it.
Right. And I think the reason why was he closed a lot of the door of what they wanted to do. The banning of the assault weapons. I've heard about a bill that was proposed to ban certain medications that people may be on that would take away their Second Amendment rights. Well, people that are going through PTSD and things like that, that are taking drugs to help them normalize their life, one of the drugs that one of the Tennessee Three proposed was to take away their constitutional rights to bear arms. So this is something that we really need to tread softly on and cautiously as we move forward in the special session. And we've already talked about it. We were thinking that most special sessions are, 2 or 3 days long. This one might drag on for 4, 5, or 6 days because we must be deliberate when we're talking about mental health, constitutional rights, infringements, right? And when we're in what we call flow motion, and flow motion is a suspension of most of the procedures on how quickly a bill can get to the House floor because you don't want us there for 6 or 7 weeks. So able to do this, we have to have proper discovery in these committees on if somebody asks a question, right? We have to be able to get the right answer for that because able to craft good legislation, we got to have what? Good information.
I've come around, and I'm curious if you're still in the same place because we've talked about the possibility of a special session quite a bit. And I came from a place that I didn't, if you're going to specifically identify like red flag laws and the like, if you're going into session just to accomplish nothing, which I think that was a non-starter, I'm thinking, well, then why would you do that to begin with? Based on the governor's call and some prior conversations that I've had with his people, I think he's broadened it enough that we can accomplish good and get this off the legislative plate prior to the regular session. Do you agree with that, or do you still?
No, I agree with you on that. Speaker Sexton had a conversation with us the other day about we are now talking in committees about mental health, right? We are talking in committees about getting people help and school safety, right? Things we normally don't come up in conversation because we're doing so many other things. I think what's happened here is now we have allowed ourselves to start talking about how can we make our schools safety? How can we get kids help better? Making sure their parents are aware of what's going on, right? How can we get people that are going through mental health crises? How can we find them places to go to get the help that they need to lead normal lives? And then looking at the criminal code that's been expanded a lot too, one of the main recruiting tools, especially down in Memphis, they use for these young adolescents is it's no longer, you heard about you had to commit murder to get into these gangs. It's not. It's stealing guns. So now we're talking about in the call of escalating those crimes of gun crimes and gun thefts to where if you are a minor over the age of 16, between 16 and 18, you could be tried in adult court. So now you start to take away those incentives from those gangs to recruit these kids because now there's real penalties.
It almost feels like, and I want to speak broadly about the call and then boil it down a little bit better in the next segment, but it almost seems out of necessity that this has broadened to more broad public health. You talk about Memphis, you talk about some of the urban areas where we're seeing concentrations of crime. Almost because it's impossible for it to be more specific regarding the issue of covenant, considering the lack of information there, because that's tied up in court. So it is, in my estimation, tell me if you think I'm wrong, inappropriate for the General Assembly to make any specific decision related to covenant because very little of the information as to what went into the planning of covenant is available to the public right now.
Agree. I think what we've seen is the auspice was to get the covenant manifesto toxicology report, get testimony on it, try to figure out what failed in the system and address those issues. Well, since we don't have that, we're trying to expand that now to figure out in the systems as they work with the TBI, with criminal justice systems, how they're all functioning together, looking at a more broad spectrum of an approach here of trying to solve a problem that touches more communities than just what touched that covenant community. And so I think the governor was very smart on this, the speakers too, of trying to craft this thing where we're not going to allow everything to happen, but we can start to target the things that we know have arisen. I know John Harris is on here talking to you. Mm-hmm. I think he's brought some issues up of things that we need to address. I think the problems they're having down in Memphis with gang violence and here in Nashville that I think we can start to address, but do it specifically. Let's not do a shotgun approach. Let's do a razor approach and a scalpel.
If I'm hearing you correctly, I like this idea of instead of throwing a blanket over the entirety of the Second Amendment and catching so many law-abiding citizens in that nexus, how about carving out the people that are doing it the right way and set them aside, those of us law-abiding citizens that do the things right, and then finding those niches that are sadly growing in our communities where they're not doing it right, where they're stealing guns, and really grind down on those crimes and try to put some teeth behind punishment so maybe it gets through the clutter and some of these individuals recognize the severity of the crime that they might be committing.
We need to send a message to those groups that we're not playing around anymore, and you will stop this behavior or else, and the or else is just going to be criminal incarceration.
Representative Scott Cepicky is with us. If you have a question or a comment, throw it on the super text line, or you can give us a call, 615-737-9986. It's 18 after the hour. Back in a moment on Super Talk.
The Chris Hand Show, weekdays at 9.
If you're voting for mayor in Nashville, don't vote based on Nashville. Vote based.
3, spending some time with Representative Scott Cepicky, a good friend of the show, talking about the call to a special session, which is underway 4 p.m. on August 21st. Before I ask you some of the specifics on the call, are you concerned at all? Let me ask it a different way. Are you confident in the abilities of the Tennessee State Troopers, et cetera, to keep you guys safe? There's a lot of talk about protest, a lot of talk about rabble-rousing. Hell, the Bullhorn Trio might show their behinds as well. But are you confident you guys are A-okay?
Yeah, I would be very careful messing with the people with the hats.
Sure.
That would be a bad decision on your part. They are very serious about what they do up there. They are very protective of us, especially. So please, whatever you do, don't touch a representative because that'll end your day very poorly. But they will do their job. They do it without prejudice. It doesn't matter who comes in the door. They treat everybody the same, right? But be careful coming up. Folks, if you come up here, let's make comments. Let's be sensible, right?
Yeah, I mean,
careful. Careful.
There was a suggestion, and I brought it up with Senator Jack Johnson yesterday, and the suggestion was brought to me by a friend of mine. I don't know if he wants me to give him credit, so I won't. That in the gallery, things descended into a little chaos.
No, it was chaos.
In the end of the regular session.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of evidence and some suggestions that a lot of the people that caused the greatest ruckus were not even from Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if there's a way to prioritize Tennessee citizens in the gallery. That might be tough.
Yeah, you're looking at that's a public place. It's very difficult to do that because we have people that live here that haven't changed their driver's license over yet from where they come from. So it's very difficult to do that. What we can say is, and you're in the gallery, you're observing the legislative process, right? You are the witnesses to what happens. You're not supposed to be a participant, right? Yeah. You're supposed to be there to be able to swear and attest to what the business was at hand, that it was done correctly. I think if everybody, and this is society, Matt, right? There's no middle ground anymore. It's hard right, hard left. There's no middle ground because one side's not going to budge, the other side's not going to budge. And that's where we navigate right now as legislators, is we try to figure out the best possible course forward for the bulk of the people in Tennessee, the majority, right? There are constitutional rights that you can't infringe upon. And to look at legislation that comes forward, if you will just bounce that off of, am I infringing on people's rights?
Mm-hmm.
Then the decisions get pretty easy. It's when you try to get into that gray area where everybody starts talking about compromise, right? Compromise leads you to a place that could put you with taking away someone's rights.
When we first started talking about the specter of a special session, after the governor mentioned that he was planning on calling one, you seemed very concerned that it was, a lot of sound and fury and would signify nothing. You seem more hopeful that you can get some good legislation passed out of this session.
I do. I think there's things, especially with school safety plans, that we definitely need to address. I know Leader Lambert has already filed a bill on that about addressing fire alarms and how we handle fire alarms going forward.
I talked to William about this, and it's a really good point that he makes. And I don't mean to cut you off there, but speak to more of that legislation as you understand.
Well, I think it's good to where we have to be careful of if a fire alarm goes off, the first thing we do is jump out in the hallways. We need to have a little bit better technology, which is out there, to identify, do we have a fire? Or is it because of, like we fear at Covenant, was the gunfire went off and the smoke triggered the gunpowder triggered the fire alarm, and the natural recourse of the children is to get up, go to the door, open the door, the kids go out in the hallway and get out. Well, that's not a good scenario.
Yeah, sadly, it is believed, based on my conversations with people who walked the scene in Covenant, that one, if not two of the kids, one of the young kids was the fire leader in the classroom and happened to be right next to the stairway that the shooter
walked into a bad situation.
And because they had been trained, because the kids get excited about going through these processes, when the fire alarm went off, oh, it's a fire, go to fire drill, everybody, fire drill. And sadly, the young man who was the fire leader got killed as a result. And this would potentially use modern technology to address whether or not there's an actual fire when the fire alarm goes off, whether the fire alarm was pulled or whether it was set off, those types of things, to better enable the teachers in that case to identify whether or not this is an actual fire and an event that they need to be concerned with.
And that's where the school safety bill we came in with the technology for the classrooms, that's where that comes in, where they're going to get their school safety grants. But we have to be able to say, hey, we need you to change the way you do this, but when we ask you to change the way you do this, we're going to fund the solutions. And I think that's the one thing that Governor Lee and the speakers and the General Assembly has done is we've taken upon ourselves to use the taxpayer money that people send us in a good, positive way to make our schools more secure and to hopefully have SROs. As you know, I'm very passionate about this. Have SROs in every school across the state of Tennessee.
Leads me to the next question. So
I knew that was coming.
The state, well, we might not have enough time. I tell you what we'll do. I want to take a time out and stick around for another segment because SROs is a huge subject. And I've not heard it officially proposed. Maybe Representative Scott Cepicky is the guy to do this. Is it time, and I'll let you answer on the other side, the question is it time that the state not only begs of the local communities that they have SROs in every school, but that they require SROs in every school and fund it? It's 1:29, almost 1:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
This report is sponsored by Mattress Firm. Better sleep. Can't wait. Black Friday now at Mattress Firm ends Tuesday.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN 134. Hey, by the way, I just I realized I've not mentioned this yet. You know, yesterday it was a big deal on that J Street Korean Grill and Bar thing. Mm-hmm. You know, where I said that I would buy a drink if somebody bought a ticket.
Yeah, a lot of people texted in pictures of their tickets.
Yeah, I counted at least 4. Might have been more than that. So here's what that caused. And Scott Cepicky's with us, and we're going to get back to the special session in a moment. But Cepicky, you'll appreciate this. So I wanted to fill all the seats, and I saw where we had a few seats still vacant. And I said, listen, you guys go to the thing and buy a ticket today, and I'll buy you a drink of your choosing, whether it's sweet tea or you get one drink ticket with your meal, but I'll buy you the second one, whether it's a wine, a cocktail, whatever. I'll foot the bill for that. And so Dan Mandis of Nashville's Morning News this morning he felt threatened or whatever. He said, we can beat 4. He got competitive again.
It's so unusual for him, too.
And he said, we can do better than this. We can do better than 4. And Matt's so competitive, and he did 4, and I want to get more than that so we can beat Murphy. And he's really wanting to beat me in this concept of buying drinks for people who bought tickets.
Now, see, if he'd had any brains, Dan, you would have extended Matt's offer, and Matt made Matt bear the financial burden of it.
Hold on. No, don't. So I'm going to call a truce. I've got an idea because I want as many people to come as possible, and I want you to enjoy yourselves. And if that little extra offer is what pushes you over the top to meet us on the 15th at the J Street Korean Grill and Bar, then so be it. But I also feel like Mandis needs a win here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be the bigger man, and I'm going to let Dan buy all the drinks.
Oh, that
for
is
everybody.
Sweet. Look at you being the good guy.
Right? So all of you that I said I was going to buy drinks for, Mandis has your drinks handled because I feel like he needs the win. Right?
You're just a good guy.
Do you understand how awesome it is to whitewash this fence? You guys don't even know how wonderful it is to whitewash this fence. Dan Mandis knows how wonderful it is to whitewash this fence. So that's what we're doing now.
You're a good egg.
I try.
You didn't hear the intro, did you?
I didn't.
It's Friday Eve all day long on the Matt Murphy Show.
What? Why are you a Benedict Arnold?
I'm not. I'm
you
totally
should have my
understood.
back.
No, I do have your back.
On the Friday Eve thing?
No, not on that.
That's awful. Do you, Scott Cepicky?
Are you guys married?
We sound like it, don't we? No, this is a platonic radio marriage. Make no mistake. A producer-host relationship, it's very much like this, where you think your radio partner's got your back, and then they stab you in the back, and then you just left there bleeding on the radio. Scott Cepicky, do you say Friday Eve ever?
When I'm here.
Love that man. Love that man.
If I didn't like you so much, I'd call you a jerk. Right now, I would, but I do.
Remember, I have legislative authority.
And you're big, and you've got even bigger children. And you know how I get when politicians or politicians.
Yeah, his kids could beat your ass.
That's true. Hey, I'm 6 days out from being threatened.
Well, you better be careful because it's about to go back to 0.
That's true. That's just true. Back to more serious topics. It seems a no-brainer if we believe that we should do everything, as our liberal friends in the General Assembly tell us, that we should do everything in our power to protect the children. It seems an absolute no-brainer, particularly considering that the General Assembly, against the votes of some of those same Democrats, passed legislation to fully fund school resource officers in every single public school in the state of Tennessee.
And private.
And private.
Yes.
The Metro Nashville school system has turned down $5.25 million. I think they took a little over $3 million, turned down an additional $5 million. And sadly, Metro Nashville Police Chief Drake said the reason was that they didn't feel like they could fill the 70 positions that would be necessary to put SROs in elementary schools in the time allotted, which was, I'm going to try to be called, a year. They had a year to get it done, and he claims he couldn't do it. I believe Chief Drake was kind of taking one for the team because certain individuals in the Metro Nashville school system did not want SROs in elementary schools. Senator Heidi Campbell, in her run for mayor, made comment on my radio show about this, saying that SROs in elementary schools would be, quote, militarizing our elementary schools. I know the answer to this, but I want you to speak to that first, and I'm going to ask you a question about what you can do as a General Assembly on this matter.
You know, if you've been to elementary schools like I have, I've been to 37 districts across the state. The one thing I know, especially in elementary schools, is those SROs that are in those schools love those children. They love interacting with them. They love talking to them, because sometimes these kids, this is the only adult that they have in their life that cares about them. And having those SROs in those situations, Dr. Battle, would possibly put these kids in a better framework and state of mind in regards to looking at police officers, of someone that they run to when they're in trouble, someone that they depend on for help when they're in trouble, instead of the excuses that are made of militarizing schools or kids are afraid of the police. You know what? They may be afraid of the police because they've never had a positive interaction with them. Why don't we, instead of having high school kids in our inner cities, that when the police say stop and they continue to run and bad things start to happen with that, maybe they have a relationship with the police that is a trusting one, that they want to get the help of these officers, these male and female officers, that do one thing, and they do one thing very well, especially in our schools. They protect our children, they care about our children, and they want to be there in case something bad happens. Matt, I'm telling you, if something bad happens that we don't want to happen in Metro Nashville schools in an elementary school, I don't know where we go from there.
So that begs this question. Has it been suggested in your conversations leading up to the special session? And I'm loath to do this. I'm a home rule guy. I'm a local rule guy. I want the local communities to make the decisions. At the same time, the state, in all of this grand experiment that is the United States of America, the states ought to and do hold supreme power in most all things. Mm-hmm. The states created the federal government. The states also created, for example, the Metro Nashville Charter. So the state has a lot of say in this. Is it time for this suggestion to be made that the state require SROs in all of our public schools?
Well, sometimes, and I've learned this as a legislator, sometimes you can craft the legislation to let them know that this is ready to go. And maybe you can take a corrective action on your part at the local level to prevent this from being mandated from the state. But, Matt, I think we're in a different time right now. I think that that we are well aware of the dangers, especially when you single out the most vulnerable part of your school community is your elementary kids that cannot defend themselves. Now, you've seen my sons in high school, right? You better be bringing something with you if you're going to take on my boys, because you're going to end up on the short end of the
stick. Right, they're going to know how to fight back.
But these elementary kids and these teachers in which are normally our youngest teachers, are the most vulnerable population we had, and it is just shocking to me that you would say, I'm going to have SROs in my middle school, I'm going to have 2 SROs in my high school, but to the public, I'm going to have no SROs in the most vulnerable population.
And we know, and I'm not trying to be overly dramatic, Scott, but what we do know about the Covenant School shooter, what we have learned is that the Covenant School shooter targeted several locations. And one of the locations, and I don't mind saying it because I had it corroborated from 2 different sources, was the Opry Mills Mall.
Correct.
And it was told to me that the decision was made by her that the Opry Mills Mall was too secure.
That's correct.
Now, lay that over what you just said, that God forbid something bad happen. We don't want it to happen, but I know that there's 2 SROs in high schools.
Correct.
In Nashville. I know that there's an SRO in middle schools. I also know that there aren't any SROs right now in elementary schools. You're creating a targeted experience, and God forbid something happen. No one wants anything to happen, but we need to be protected. And these folks who are so quick to jump on your constitutional rights and my constitutional rights as law-abiding citizens, for whatever reason, refuse to even consider it as a local matter, even when the state legislature fully funds it.
That's correct. I think we've got to really start to consider, like you said, crafting some legislation that requires it. Now, maybe it's just allowing, and in the current law we have, Matt, both entities, the school system and law enforcement, have to enter into an agreement to place these SRO officers in the schools.
Okay. Maybe
under the guise of public safety, right? Providing the safety of these children and these teachers, that maybe if this understanding cannot be reached, then we give law enforcement the ability to trump the school system on public safety and say, we will put these SROs in these schools. Because my gut feeling is I do not believe any law enforcement agency, even Chief Battle, knows that he has to protect. He knows he's got to protect these kids. And he wants to do it. Deep down inside, I think he wants to do it. And you kind of alluded to it, that maybe he's doing a solid for someone else to protect them by saying he can't get them. But let me tell you something. They've taken the money from middle and high school.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to go after officers for middle and high school. Well, why wouldn't you just take the money for elementary? And if you're going to get middle school and high school covered, just shift those into elementary.
And I said at the time, Drake's there saying, we don't have the time. I'm thinking it's a year. The $5.25 million's on the table.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 70 positions to fill. I know you're short already. I get it. But I did the math, Scott. 70, even if I grant $1 million in administrative costs, that's still like $57,000 a position for these SROs. I'm thinking, if you go for it, and if you fall short, I am certain that the General Assembly will work with you.
Well, it's a grant, right? So we can renew the grant and refund it again next year for another $5 million more, and keep expanding it if we have to. If you're telling me, Chief, that you don't have enough money to get it done, let your representative know, and trust me, they'll run a bill and we'll fund it appropriately. But this is not about money. This is about will.
It's all want to.
And I will tell you this, in the General Assembly, we have the will to make this happen.
All right, let's talk to Walker in Fayetteville. Wants to comment on this with Representative Scott Cepicky in the moments that we have left. Walker, what do you got?
Yeah, my brother lives in North Alabama. I live in Fayetteville. And the problem is, if you look, and you probably already have because you're a good guy, and that's why I listen to your show every day. Most of the people that go into school shootings are targeting elementary kids so they can defend themselves and not high schools. And my brother that lives in North Alabama, they're giving them a lot of back about SROs. How much is a human life worth that they can't get an SRO in a school to stop these people? And I'll wait on your comment.
Walker, I got to be honest. I'm having trouble hearing the question. Will you repeat the question again? How much? I lost some of it.
Yeah. The problem is the schools here in Tennessee, where I live, I'm from, they target the elementary schools. Did you catch it?
I lost you again, Walker. I lost the last side of it.
Okay, I got it now. Okay, I'm okay now. I turned my head to the left and stuff my tongue.
No, it's okay. Just one more time with the question.
Okay. They target the elementary schools where these children can't defend themselves.
Right.
The high school kids, we got all these big football players. They won't go in there hardly ever.
Right.
They'll beat the hell out of them. Excuse my language, but they target these elementary schools, and they're giving us a lot of flack about getting SROs. How much is a human life worth that they can't get one SRO to protect these children? And why don't they? Now, where my brother lives in North Alabama, they've changed. He lives in Madison County. They've changed all their school doors to metal doors where they can't blow the glass out.
Well, that's another component. I'm glad you brought it up. I want Scott to have the chance to speak to that. I think we're all in agreement that it is inexplicable that we would not expend the same resources in our elementary schools that we do in middle or high school, or even more.
That is correct. And most districts are on board with this. They are ramping up their school safety assessments to making sure that they have the ballistic tape on the glass now. They have the locks on the doors. They're buying the cameras, the ones that you have to press the button and they identify who you are. They're investing in, I think it's called Raptor or Viper, which is you have to show them your driver's license. They run that through the system real quick to see if there's any wants and warrants.
Yes.
Making sure, and it is becoming a very secure facility, but you must secure those facilities where your most vulnerable are, and these are these little kids who are 6, 7 years old.
It seems to me that the governor has, and I'm not acting as a cheerleader for the governor when I say this, but I'm looking at the call, and it feels like he has listened to interests that he's spoken with, like the legislature, with some of these items. Human trafficking comes to mind. He included that in the call. I mean, so are those some things that you're excited about from a special session perspective? Anything else that we've missed that particularly caught your eye?
No, I think what we've talked about is very well taken by the people of Tennessee. We're trying to stiffen the crimes for people who commit gun crimes, right? We're trying to provide more accessibility to mental health in those facilities. We're looking into human trafficking and stiffening the penalties. You got to secure the border. Okay, we got to secure the border first to stop the flow of all these people coming across that are putting these kids in danger of being trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to secure the border. I hope they're listening. I hope our congressmen and senators are listening.
I got Congressman Mark Green on next. So
we have got to secure the border, because if you secure the border for us, and Congressman Green was here in the General Assembly, then we can protect our borders better in Tennessee. But when we got this flow of people coming across, people that are outside the system, that are in the shadows, and they're trying to get fed, they are susceptible to these people in human trafficking. It is. And it's affecting everybody, Matt. We've got to solve this problem in Tennessee very quickly. And we can do that with help from the federal government by securing the border.
And circling back to where we started before we say goodbye, it's a no-brainer on the issue of constitutional rights and red flag laws that this is going nowhere.
Going nowhere.
Well, there you go.
Question.
Yes.
5601, Scott for governor. That's a statement, not a question. Is that going to happen?
No, I can do it. Hold on, wait. Let me repeat it. Scott for governor? Scott for governor?
Okay, you're going to be getting a phone call from my wife real quick, and she's going to probably put a hit on
So that's a maybe.
Look, I don't need Scott. I mean, the last time I was at a get together, I had the audio visual guy coming after me. I don't need Scott's wife coming after me because of something you said, Belkay.
Remember, she was the mother of my two boys.
That's true.
She can take you out.
I'm sure she can. By the way, Cepicky said a minute ago, with you with no goatee, you want to tell him?
You look like you're about 12 years old back there, man.
Well, I'll take it.
You probably get carded now when you go down on Broadway.
I hope so. Your lips to God's ears.
You can't get him out of his house. He's not going anywhere near Broadway. By the way, and I just one final thought before we say goodbye. I know that you don't think someone with this little fashion sense notices, but your little Foursquare game, your pocket square game, solid, on point.
Tie's pretty rocking too.
Yeah, I like that.
That's for my wife. She takes care of me very well.
Yeah, good for you. Representative Cepicky, thank you.